Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. If you are interested in clinical research, clinical data management, and medical advancements, and how we got to where we are today in healthcare, then you are in the right place. I am your clinical guide, and in this video, we are diving into the fascinating history of clinical trials, how it started, major breakthroughs, and the impact it has on the medicine today. This is just a beginning. I will be covering more such videos about clinical research and drug development, career opportunities in clinical research. If you are a student or professional, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell for more such videos and you don't miss. So let's get started. What is clinical research? Clinical research is a part of a complex procedure to demonstrate the effectiveness and the safety of a drug and other investigational products, medical devices, vaccines, treatment, or procedures. So, by the means of clinical trials, we can evaluate the efficacy and the safety of new interventions in human beings. Okay, after preclinical trials. So, what is history of clinical research? Ancient Chinese medicine by Shen Nang. According to the legend, Shen Nung is the father of Chinese medicine and pharmacology. He has ate 365 medicinal plants over the course of his life, turned green and died. Let's go to the next slide. The first ever clinical trial is conducted by James Lane. So in 1947, May 20, James Lane is considered the first physician to have conducted a controlled clinical trials of the modern era. May 20 is Clinical Trials Day, a worldwide celebration of first controlled clinical trial conducted by naval surgeon James Lind in May 1747. Through his research, uh, Lind was able to find remedy for sailors suffering scurvy. He had made six groups of two sailors each. One has given vinegar, second diluted sulfuric acid, third cedar, fourth seawater, fifth nutmeg, garlic, and horseradish mixture, and sixth one two oranges and one lemon, from which the two oranges and one lemon was proved as the most effective treatment for scurvy. This was about the first ever clinical trial in the history of clinical trials, which is conducted by the James Lane. Let's move further. Elixir Sulfanilamide Tragedy. Sulfanilamide Tragedy in 1937, the SE Messenger Company created a preparation of sulfanilamide using diethylene glycol as a solvent, elixir sulfanilamide. Diethylene glycol can cause kidney damage or failure. So, diethylene glycol is poisonous to humans and other mammals, but Harold Watkins, who was the company's chief pharmacist, was not aware of this. So Watkin added raspberry flavoring to the sulfa drug, which he had dissolved in a diethylene glycol, and the company then marketed the product. No animal testing were performed, no regulations requiring the pre-marketing safety testing of that new drug. So in 1937, in September 1937, the selling and distribution has started of elixir sulfanilamide. Then by October 11th, American Medical Association has received a report of several deaths caused by this medicine, at least about hundreds of deaths. After that, the Watkin, the chemist, has committed suicide while awaiting a trial. So, what do we understand about sulfanilamide tragedy? That one preparation has been made named elixir sulfanilamide using diethylene glycol as a solvent. Okay, the diethylene glycol was poisonous to human beings and also mammals, which can cause kidney failure and also death. So, before marketing of elixir sulfanilamide, no animal testing were performed or any safety testing were performed before marketing of that product. Due to that, several deaths has occurred, about at least of hundreds of deaths received by American Medical Association. And after this tragedy, the Watkin, who was the chief pharmacist of that SM Essential company committed suicide. Let's move to the next slide. Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act. The Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act is a US federal law enacted in 1938 to regulate the safety and labeling of food, drug, medical devices, cosmetics. It is enforced by the US FDA and ensures that these products um, meet safety, efficacy, and quality standards before reaching consumers. This law was introduced in response to the sulfanilamide disaster of 1937. Okay, so in 1937, we have just discussed about the sulfanilamide disaster only caused because of the no animal testing were performed before marketing of a product. Okay, so just after this tragedy, uh, means after 1937, in 1938, one law has been enacted named Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act by the which has provided a law regarding safety, efficacy, and quality standards should be met um, for the product before reaching to consumers. So, what it required that the company to perform animal safety testing on their proposed new drugs and submit the safety data to US FDA before being allowed to market their products. Okay. FDA had no authority to withdraw the product from market for safety reasons since there was no regulation regarding safety. Here we are talking about the Elixir Sulfanilamide drug that Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act has been enacted just after the sulfanilamide drug and proposed a law regarding the safety testing of a new uh, investigational product and provide the safety data to US FDA before being allowed to the marketing of that product. Okay, so when the American Medical Association has received several days, the Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act had no authority to withdraw that product from market for safety reasons. Why? Because in 1938 only the law was enacted about safety testing of the drug and the actual marketing of elixir sulfanilamide has only started in 1937 when there was no law about safety. So that's why US FDA had no authority to withdraw the elixir sulfanilamide for safety reasons because there were no law about safety. So FDA then removed that elixir sulfanilamide for mislabeling and given a reason about that the elixir had to contain alcohol and which was not present in the product. Okay, the elixir sulfanilamide should contain alcohol in it, but as we go with the name elixir sulfanilamide, it does not. The alcohol was not present in the product. This was the reason given by the FDA for removing that product from for mislabeling from the market. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Nazi human experimentation conducted by German physicians on thousands of concentration camp prisoners without their consent. Most prisoners died or were permanently crippled as a result. So there were many experimentation performed on prisoners, but we are going to see only few of them. Uh, for example, bone, muscle, and nerve regeneration. So, in bone, muscle, and nerve regeneration experiment conducted for the benefit of German armed forces. The aim to study this to bone, muscle, and nerve regeneration and bone transplantation from one person to another. They have removed the sections of bone, muscles, and nerve from subjects without using anesthesia. So the victim suffered intense agony, mutilation, and permanent disability. In bone, muscle, and nerve regeneration. This was the experiment conducted on prisoners for the benefit of German armed forces. Okay, and the overall aim was to study the bone, muscle, nerve regeneration, and bone transplantation from one person to another. So for that, they have removed the sections of bone, muscle, and nerve from the subjects without giving them anesthesia, which is like obvious that the prisoners have suffered the intense agony because of that, and also suffered a permanent disability due to this experiment. Let's move to the next slide. Hypothermia. Hypothermia is a condition where a person's body temperature falls below 35 degrees Celsius and where he is unable to rewarm his body again. Okay. So the hypothermia experiment was conducted for discovering the means to prevent and treat hypothermia. Means um, how to prevent the hypothermia and the treatment for hypothermia. So subjects forced to endure a tank of ice water for up to 5 hours. And in another study, the prisoners placed naked into the open air for several hours with temperature as below as minus degrees Celsius. So these situations were um, performed on prisoners to for contracting them with hypothermia, just to discover the means and the treatment for hypothermia. So because of that, approximately 100 of people are reported to have died as a result of this experiment. Then malaria experiment from 1942 to 1945, this experiment was conducted. The aim of malaria experiment was to investigate the immunization, or you can say the vaccines treatment for malaria. So healthy inmates were chosen and infected by the mosquitoes or were injected by the extracts of mucus glands of female mosquitoes. After contracting with them with the disease, the subjects were treated with various of drugs to test their relative efficacy. Okay, over 1,000 people were used and more than half died as a result in a malaria experiment. They have chosen the healthy inmates. They have infected them with the extract of mucus glands of female mosquito. And after contracting with the disease called malaria, the subjects were treated with various drugs. Why? Because their overall aim was to investigate the immunization for the treatment of malaria. That's why they have treated with various drugs to test their relative efficacy over malaria. And because of that, 100 of people were used and more than half died as a result. Then poisoning experiment 1943 to 1944 experiment was conducted to investigate the effect of various poisons. The poisons were secretly administered to the experimental subjects in their food, and the victims died as a result of the poison or were killed immediately to in order to permit the autopsies. In poisoning treatment, the subjects were they have administered the poison in the body of subjects via their food, and as a result of the poison, the victims died, and some of were immediately killed in order to permit autopsies. Why? To permit autopsies because they wanted to investigate the effect of various poisons. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Nuremberg Code. So, as a result of uh, Nazi experiment, the Nuremberg Code was enacted in 1947. The Nazi experiment was about without giving informed consent from prisoners. The German physicians have conducted various experiments on their body. Because of that, many have suffered permanent disabilities and also many were died because of that experiments. So then Nuremberg Code in 1947 came, presenting the law about the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential for conducting any experiment or clinical trials. Okay, and also that uh, for taking voluntary consent from the subject, it is very essential that the subject should be at liberty, means he should be educated enough to understand the aspects of clinical trial, and only after that he should given his voluntary consent for the participation in the clinical trial. And also that the persons involved, like scientists involved in a clinical trial, should be educated, trained, and experienced enough to perform the respective task. And also they should they will be responsible for um, terminating a trial at any point of time. Why someone terminate a trial at any point of time? Because if they find any findings about deaths, permanent disabilities, or any serious adverse event throughout a clinical trial, in that case, a researcher or a scientist can terminate a trial at any point of time. Okay, and also that the the degree of risk to be taken uh, should we never exceed the humanitarian importance of solving the problem. Like whatever the risk associated with a clinical trial should never be high when we compare it to the benefits of a clinical trial, means, or the benefits of a clinical trial should be more against risk associated with it. Okay, so and also that on the basis of animal experimentation and the knowledge of natural history of the disease, the clinical trial should be designed. Okay, so these were all the laws presented by Nuremberg Code after Nazi human experiment. After this thalidomide tragedy in 1950s to 1960s. So thalidomide drug was developed by a German company Grünenthal. Thalidomide drug was good for pregnant women for reducing their morning sickness. But when a drug is consumed during pregnancy, it caused birth defects in newborn babies, like a phocomelia. Phocomelia is a condition where newborn babies um, come with shortened limbs, means the long bones of legs and arms are shortened or missing. You can see in the picture also. Then Kefauver-Harris Amendment, also known as the Drug Efficacy Amendment by US Congress in 1962. So the amendment was a response to the thalidomide disaster. So you can able to link the scenarios and the amendments. Like we have seen that first, Elixir Sulfanilamide disaster, which is caused because of no animal testing or safety testing were performed on subjects before marketing of that product. Then the Food, Drug and Cosmetic Act has enacted, uh, stating a law regarding safety testing and submitting the data about safety to the US FDA before marketing the product. Then we have seen that Nazi experiment, which was conducted without taking informed consent from prisoners, and many experimentation were performed, and many deaths were caused, or permanent disability has been found in prisoners or the subjects. For the response for to response to that uh, tragedy, the Nuremberg Code has been enacted, stating that voluntary consent from the patient is very important for for conducting any experiment on subjects, and many such laws was included in Nuremberg. After that, we have seen that thalidomide tragedy because of the particular drug can be beneficial also for some condition, but also it can have some disadvantages or adverse reactions related to that can be there. So, uh, at response to this tragedy, Kefauver Harris Amendment was enacted in 1962. This is how you can connect the amendments with the scenarios. Okay. Okay, let's see. Kefauver-Harris Amendment, also known as the Drug Efficacy Amendment by U.S. Congress in 1964. The amendment was a response to Thalidomide tragedy. It introduced a proof of efficacy requirement that was not present before. In addition, the amendment required the drug advertising to disclose accurate information about side effects and the efficacy of treatment. The active FDA approval requires. Okay. The Kefauver-Harris Amendment stated that uh, for any product, drug advertisement, um, the drug advertising should be performed to disclose the accurate information about that drug and stating side effects, the efficacy, every parameter should be covered while advertising the drug. And also the FDA approval requires for um, that particular drug. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Jewish Chronic Disease Hospital Study. So, Jewish Chronic Disease Hospital Study in 1963, the physicians were interested to study the immune uh, response to cancer cells. Means it is conducted by Dr. Chester Southam and his colleague at a Jewish chronic disease hospital. The researchers injected live cancer cells into 22 elders who were already suffering from many chronic diseases. And the purpose was to study the immune system response to cancer cells. The patient were not informed that they were being inacted with cancer cells. Some physicians and hospital staff objected, leading to scandal when the study was exposed. Uh, the New York State Board of Regents found Dr. Southam guilty of fraud and unprofessional conduct. Okay, so Jewish Chronic Disease Hospital Study, I think in 1963, only after Nuremberg Code, which has stated that the voluntary informed consent is very necessary. But still, in Jewish Chronic Disease Hospital Study conducted in 1963 without uh, taking informed consent uh, from 22 elderly patients who were already suffering from many chronic diseases, and the aim was to investigate the immune system's response to cancer cells. For that, they have injected the live cancer cells into the body of elderly patients, and after this, um, because why? Because the physicians thought that the cells would be rejected anyways, and they don't want to alarm the patients. Uh, then the study got disclosed, and the Dr. Southam found guilty for that unprofessional conduct. Then the Declaration of Helsinki in 1964 has come. The Declaration of Helsinki is a set of ethical principles for medical research involving human subjects. It was the first adopted in 1964 by World Medical Association, stating laws for informed consent. The researchers must obtain the voluntary and fully informed consent from participants. The written informed consent from the participant, which was not in Nuremberg Code. Nuremberg Code has only stated that the voluntary consent is necessary, but in Declaration of Helsinki, the written informed consent form should be a priority for uh, for taking participant into the study. Then patient safety first, the well-being of research subjects must always take a priority over scientific interest. That the right safety and well-being of the subject should be protected throughout the clinical trial. Then ethical review. All study must be reviewed by an independent ethical committee. Independent ethical committee is an regulatory body which reviews and approves the conduct of clinical trial. So this is what is required for conducting any trial: the approval from ethical committee and the review by ethical committee. Then risk versus benefit, as I already explained this parameter, that benefit should be more against the risk associated with investigational product. Then placebo use. Placebo should only be used when no proven treatment has exist. Vulnerable population. Vulnerable populations like children's, mentally ill patients, or elders, pregnant women, prisoners. These are the vulnerable population. So the extra protection should be given to vulnerable population in a clinical trial. Let's move to the next slide. Tuskegee Syphilis Study was an unethical medical experiment that last lasted for 40 years, and which is conducted by the US Public Health Services in Tuskegee, Alabama. So the study involved 600 American men, out of which 399 were with untreated syphilis and 201 without the syphilis. So the subjects were misled about the nature of research without patient informed consent. Again, so the patient informed that they were being treated for bad blood, and in exchange of participating in the trial, uh, they will be having they will be receiving the free medical examination, free meals, and insurance also. The study targeted the poor, uneducated African Americans, and many men suffered the severe health complications, including blindness, mental illness, and death. Even after the penicillin was a drug of choice for syphilis in 1947, uh, like while this experiment in 1947 itself, the penicillin has became the drug of choice for syphilis. Researchers did not offer it to the subjects. Why? Because their purpose was to observe the natural progression of untreated syphilis in African American men. This was their whole purpose. That's why they have not even given the penicillin to the subject suffering from syphilis. So, after this trial, the study was finally exposed in 1972, leading to public outrage and its termination. And the US government passed the National Research Act in requiring informed consent for human studies. Institutional review board were established to monitor research ethics after this experiment. And the President Bill Clinton formally apologized to the victims and their families. The study played a major role in shaping modern research ethics and leading to guidelines like Belmont Report 1979 and stricter protection for human research subjects. So in Tuskegee Syphilis Study, also the informed consent was not taken for um, having having participants in a study. So subjects were misled for being um, participated for make them participate in a trial. So they were misled like they will be receiving the health insurance, free meals, okay, free examinations for taking participation in the trial, and also that penicillin was not given when it was a drug of choice discovered in 1943, and many participants suffered the several health issues due to this experiment. So this after this experiment, the institutional review board were established to monitor research ethics, and also that It has played a major role in shaping the modern research ethics, and the Belmont Report has been enacted in 1937. What it states, let's see in the next slide. Belmont Report states that the principle of respect, principle of beneficence, principle of justice, principle of respect states that um, recognized autonomy of humans and require clear informed consent form. What we mean by that, the clear informed consent will be required for taking participation in the clinical from the subjects. Then also safeguard the vulnerable population, children, pregnant women, prisoners, that this special treatment or the extra treatment should be or the care should be taken towards the vulnerable population. Then privacy and confidentiality. We should keep the privacy and the confidentiality of clinical trial data also, and the data related to participant or a subject in a clinical trial. And principle of beneficence states research must be shown to be beneficial, more benefit and less risk, less harm. I have already explained this part. Then principle of justice, proper inclusion and exclusion, proper system of recruitment means we should follow the inclusion and the exclusion criteria mentioned in a clinical trial protocol for selecting a participants for a clinical trial, and the proper system of recruitment should be followed through, while recruiting or enrolling the participant in a clinical trial. So this is how um, we have overall discussed the history of clinical trials, and also I hope, yeah, you all are able to link the scenarios with the amendments has come. And yeah, this was all about the history of clinical trials. I will be coming with more uh, videos and concepts related to the clinical trial for gaining more for you to gain more knowledge about this field. And thank you so much. Please like the video and comment if any doubts you are having. I will try to resolve it. Thank you so much.